Good evening, everyone. Kushagra Goyal, this side from Unacademy, the legal game, and today we are carrying on with our discussion about the Israel-Palestine conflict. We are we yesterday discussed the basic background of the conflict there, the wars that happened, how the map of Israel changed over time, how Palestine got reduced, and we spoke about how all of it in general changed the nature. We talked about the concept of colonial or settler colonialism per se. We talked about the foreign policy implications that it was causing. Now we are carrying forward the story. We're carrying forward the story from the time of 1980s and how it has evolved until today. What was the clashes at Al-Aqsa Mosque all about? How they are interrelated to our overall preparation for the CLAT examination. So all that discussion we'll be doing now. Okay. Good evening to you, Anushka. Good evening to all of you. All right. So we'll be carrying forward the discussion. But before we do that, a brief introduction about myself. So I am Kushagra Goyal, a graduate from National Law University, a master's in economics. I assisted students to achieve AIR 4, AIR 16 in CLAT 2021. Okay, and 90% of the questions came from a series I did on YouTube. Now, one humble request that I have for all the people is to join us on the Telegram app. The Telegram app group known as Kushagra Goyal, the legal game, is where I update all the participants about the content we'll be doing, how all of it is related to improving your overall CLAT preparation and your current affairs in general and GK and the larger space. Good evening, Soham. Good evening to you also. So, therefore, I request all of you, whosoever are joining me for the very first time, to join the Telegram channel. The link to it is given in the description box. If you don't want to go through the hassle of typing in, searching in Kushagra Goyal on the Telegram app. Okay, and when you are on the path of learning, it's always better to do it in a far more professional way. And the Learners app is the space where you can do it in a much more professional manner, where you can ask us questions during live classes, you can participate in unlimited national and sectional mock tests, and you get to participate in unlimited quizzes. All of this you can avail at an additional 10% discount if you use my code KUSSGK for the same. And even if you're not subscribing, you can use the referral it as a referral code. So the code name is KUSHGK. You can find me when you download the app. You can find Kushagra Goyal or the username as KushGK also. That will direct you directly to the content that I have covered. One of them, and when you are on the platform, you get to experience beautiful feature of the live quiz. The live quiz is where students can participate in quiz being hosted by educators and also start their own quiz. And there is today the Unacademy Law Aptitude Test that is live. It's a 60-minute, 60 question, 60 mark test, which is for your CLAT preparation per se. And from Monday to Friday, you can participate in weekly T20 test on the lines of the T20 World Cup. And we have started two new batches, one Law Masters, which is a comprehensive batch for CLAT 2022, and Law Tigers, which is for CLAT 2023 students. Okay. And lastly is my invitation to all of you to attend the special classes. Special classes are like this big free seminars where you get to experience all the features that a plus student or a subscriber experiences without paying a penny for it. And the classes that you're attending are all free of cost and they are related to the preparation and the exam that you're preparing. I have hosted three series. First, Indo-China border dispute. Second, related to military alliances. And third, related to India's trade policy. I'll be carrying forward the discussion of India's trade policy on it from November month onwards, which starts Monday. So please tune in. The details are given in the description box. And whenever you are on the app and you encounter a bug, you can report that using the form in the description box. So a quick revision. Yesterday we talked about the history of the dispute. We covered Zionism, how it was the movement for a separate and independent state for the Jews. Okay, how it was. in the sense a little communal because it was on the lines of a religious identity. All right, it wasn't a nationalistic movement, it was more communal in the orientation. Okay, and the root cause of all division in the modern era is somewhere the hand of the British is there. The United Kingdom had got passed a resolution named Resolution 181. Resolution 181. Okay, that was the one that was passed by United Nations General Assembly for creation of three states: the state for Jews, Israel; the state for Arabs, Palestine; and Jerusalem to be created as a corpus separatum. Okay, so this term is very, very important: corpus separatum. Very, very important to be remembered. Okay, then on the map, we had talked about how the British Mandate of Palestine was divided into half. Jordan on the right, left, all of it was Palestine. And then we spoke about the transition from historical Palestine to present day Israel, where the Arabs or the Palestinians of Arab origin have reduced to small, small pockets of population on the green on this map. Okay, so this was the historical crux. The conflict started with the first Arab Israeli War, 1948 to 49. This was won by Israel. Then happened the second war, which was also known as the Six Day War. It happened in 1967. Israel won the war comprehensively, and that gave them a position of domination in the region. Okay, and all right. So इसके बाद then there was a agreement known as the Camp David Accord. The Camp David Accords were signed on the insistence of United States. Okay, United States being one of the close allies of Israel, which had backed it during these wars, and this led to the first recognition of Israel in the region. Who did it? Egypt. Egypt became the first country in West Asia or Middle East to officially recognize Israel and have full diplomatic relations with them. Then we had spoken about the settlers colonialism. Okay, in the meantime, what had Israel done? Right, as per the historical resolution, they should have given the land of the Palestinians back to the Palestinians. Right, once they had won the war, they had no a moral obligation came upon them that they had to either decide to vacate the Palestinian land and create a Palestinian country and live peacefully with them. And they adopted the other path. What was this other path? The other path was that no, we will have the domination over this entire territory. Okay, there are certain Israelis who believe that see, this entire territory of Israel and what was to be Palestine only belongs to Jews. Okay, so therefore they have begun the process of what is known as settler colonialism. Let's see, eventually we will move into Palestinian territories. And how did was it incentivized? This was incentivized through by subsidies. So what is a subsidy? A subsidy is government paying the cost of something out of its own pockets. Okay, in this dispute also, to provide for settler colonialism, to incentivize people to move into Palestinian territories, the Israeli government was like, we will occupy the land, we will build the houses there, we will rehabilitate you, and we will give you subsidies or cheaper housing in comparison to, let's say, what you will get at Tel Aviv. So this was the key mechanism of permanently altering the status quo of the territory. Okay, this is one of the reason, this principle of permanently changing the status quo of the territory is why after 1947, we have not insisted on a plebiscite in Kashmir. In the region of POK, right? In the region of POK and overall Kashmir, it was decided ki let the people decide. Let the people vote, okay? And if they choose to go with Pakistan, good enough. If they chose to remain with India, well and good. If they chose to remain independent, that's amazing. It will be the people's choice. But what did Pakistan do? In 1947, it infiltrated the area of POK with its own people, right? To permanently change the status quo. Once the status quo has changed and you have changed the demography of this region, you cannot trust the plebiscite anymore. A vote can be, the process can be democratic. We can claim that everyone got a chance to vote. But if the voters themselves are not genuine, then also it's a kind of voter fraud. So that is what has been the concern of India here. Similarly, Israel knows that, see, once we alter the territory, there is nothing that Israel Palestine can do. So once we have moved into this area, we have already won the wars against these Middle Eastern countries. So there is nothing that can stop us or our people, or no one can actually remove us from our territory. One of the reasons why, can anyone tell me why did we go to United Nations for Kashmir? Anyone? Any idea? Why did we decide to go to to take the matter of Kashmir to UNO? Soham, Anushka, any of the others who are watching? If not, I'll explain. Just take a minute to think about it. What was the rationale behind us taking the matter to to UNO about Kashmir? Resolving that issue was out of our capacity. Definitely not. So, what did we say? All right, there was Kashmir territory. Okay, Kashmir territory had been divided at half, known as the LOC. Right? Officially, this entire territory was supposed to be ours. Right? We had the paper, we had the documents, we had the king. Raja Hari Singh was still alive. Right? He had not passed away. All the people were still there, right? Who have given Kashmir to India. So what? Why we went to UNO to tell the UNO that, see, you are the main body. You tell Pakistan to give up the claim here and go back to its original place, or restore the entire of Kashmir to us. At UNSC, who were there? Britain was there. So Britain had a commitment, right? They knew they had committed कि if a king decides to give up his territory to a particular country, which he did to India, that entire territory will be ours, right? We had already stopped the Pakistanis at the border, right? So our prime minister thought, कि why should I fight for something which is already mine without injuring my soldiers? I can avoid this fight here. But that is where he was wrong. He thought the United Nations was going to be a just place, that they will do justice. So, and they obviously did not listen, right? No, there was no consensus. United Kingdom के अंदर, United Kingdom and US were the chief protagonists of stabbing us in the back, right? They were like, कि, you should, they did not insist on Pakistan going back. So Israel had noticed, right? They know कि big powers will never dictate it to Israel that see what you are doing demographically to alter the region is a wrong practice. Okay, that this is something wrongful, you should not indulge in it. But no, they know that no one is going to tell them anything, right? Because they have strong links with the bureaucracy in America. A lot of Jewish community influence is also there in their society. So they knew they can get away with it. In normal terms, when you'll study property law in law schools also, okay, uh, probably third year में you all will study property law, okay. उसके अंदर क्या होता है कि whosoever has possession, okay, whosoever has possession has a stronger claim, okay. So whenever the party that is claiming, or let's say there is something contentious, okay, let's say these earbuds, you are claiming that they are yours, I am claiming they are mine. Right now they are in my house. So I can say, see these earbuds, I own them, they are in my house. You have to establish that at some point of time you had possession of them, I stole it away from you wrongfully. So whose burden is it far more? The one who is outside of possession of the land, है ना? जिसके पास लैंड नहीं है, their claim to claim that particular territory becomes far more difficult. So Israel knows this, that once they move their people into that particular territory, no one can do anything against them, right? To establish their claim, it will be far more easier for them, right? And in a property case, okay, let's say what will happen in this area, the case will not be Palestinians against Israel government. Okay, it will be, let's say there is Jew one. Okay, let's say this is an individual. This is an individual. Okay, they have the might of Israel backing them. Okay, then there will be a Palestine one. Okay, one individual Palestine one. His house has been taken away by these two fellows. What will he has to do? This one person will have to fight against this, and this person. Each individual will have to prove their claim on a particular piece of land once they are kicked out of it. Okay, let's say Palestine 1 is claiming this land and Jew 1 and 2 are also claiming this land. By virtue of power, okay, it will be far more easier for these two to prove their claim, right? Because there is an entire state backing them. A Palestinian will have to go against his own government. Defeating a government is far more difficult. All right. So that is the key problem and the key principle of settler colonialism. All right. This naturally creates a hierarchy of citizens within Israel where Jews are given preference because Israel is a theocratic state. The idea of Israel is itself that it's a religious entity. It has been created for the Jews. So any Palestinian thinking that they will get justice is similar to India thinking that they will get justice at United Nations, जो कि हमें नहीं मिलेगा. All right. So this is the concept known as settler colonialism. Okay. The most recent clashes that we witnessed in 2021 were also all part of this policy of settler colonialism. इसकी वजह से ये हुए थे. So we'll be coming to that now. But before that, okay, in the meantime, after the 6 Day War, all right, so Palestinians were being pushed away. Slowly, they were being pushed back. Okay, that led to what is known as the first Intifada. Intifada is known as an uprising. Arabic word here, Intifada. It's like a revolution that we all will get together to fight against something. So the first Intifada happened in 1987 to 1993. Palestinians hit the road. Okay, they put out blockades across Palestinian territory by Palestinians. Okay, their demand was against the Israeli settlements for the Free State of Palestine. So the event is known as the First Intifada. Protests and blockades against Israeli settlement. Settlement, settler colonialism. The process of settler colonialism had begun from 1967 onwards. ठीक है, तो it was ongoing, धीरे धीरे. Okay, so this was the key aspect that was happening. Fair enough. उसके बाद because of the democratic pressure, imagine a 6 year long protest. Farm bills have been The farmers have been protesting against the farm bills for 1 year. They have already managed to get the laws suspended. They are not in force anymore, right? Government of India is actually using the old farm laws to actually reduce the prices of certain commodities or at least control them. So this is the power of peaceful protest. So first Intifada was more or less peaceful. Okay, there were peaceful demonstrations that went out in the entire territory. That led to what is known as the Oslo Accords of 1993 and 1994. Okay, Oslo Accords. Under Oslo Accords, they are known as the first step towards peace in Israel and Palestine. First step towards peace in Israel Palestine. Under this, what was done? कि पैलेस्टीनियंस को गवर्न करने के लिए एक पैलेस्टीनियन अथॉरिटी बनाई जाएगी. ओके, एंड कि जिस भी एरिया में पैलेस्टीनियंस रहते हैं उसको गवर्न करने की पावर उनको खुद दी जाएगी. ऑलराइट, तो दे वर गिवन राइट टू सेल्फ गवर्नेंस. Under Oslo Accords, Jordan also had, or Jordan diplomatically recognized Israel. First pure Muslim country to recognize them. Okay, Jordan diplomatically recognized Israel. Okay, and the Palestinians were granted the right to self-governance in what territories? The West Bank and Gaza Strip. Up, I'll take you to the map again to show you where the West Bank and the Gaza Strip is. Okay, this area is known as the West Bank. अब इसराइल के ईस्ट के अंदर है, राइट? दिस एरिया इज इन Israel's east, but it is given the name West Bank. Why? Because it is on the west side of the Jordan River. ये कोरल सी है, डेड सी, ऑलराइट, इसके लेफ्ट साइड में. That is why it is known as West Bank. This green spot that you see, this is known as the Gaza Strip. Okay, so these are the two territories where a Palestine Authority was created. ठीक है. All right. So who were the protagonists behind this process? All right. So the chief protagonist was the Prime Minister of Israel, Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, or Yitzhak. Yit, it's known as Yitzhak Rabin. Okay. So initiated this peace process. All right. In 1994, Jordan also normalized diplomatic relations with Israel. In 1994 Nobel Peace Prize, okay, was also given to the three people who were part of the Oslo Accords. Okay, three parties to the Oslo Accord were granted the 1994 Nobel Peace Prize. ये वाला स्टैटिक जीके फैक्ट इज ऑल्सो वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ठीक है, काफी पूछ सकते हैं क्योंकि नोबेल से रिलेटेड क्वेश्चन आ सकता है. इस साल ही द क्लैशेस बिटवीन Hamas and the Israeli government have happened. Okay, so question आ सकता है, right? So ये fact हमें पता होना चाहिए. 1994 का Nobel Peace Prize was given to Yitzhak Rabin, Yasser Arafat, and Shimon Peres. Okay, Yasser Arafat was the leader of Palestine, and Shimon Peres was the opposition leader in Israel. So it was a great moment of bonhomie. Okay, but right-wing Zionists. Uh, okay, right-wing Zionism followers, they believe कि Palestinians का कोई हक ही नहीं बनता है. This land was the original holy land of the Jews. So only the Jews are supposed to live here. Okay, very similar to the idea of Muhammad Ali Jinnah's Pakistan. Okay, that this land is only and only for the followers of one particular religion. Okay, some in India also believe that India should be a pure Hindu country only, right? Which is not constitutionally the envision. So the right wing Zionism followers, they assassinated the prime minister while he was in office. So much hatred. They thought, they knew ki if this guy remains, peace might come to Israel Palestine. Okay, so while his assassination was something of the last straw, almost every leader who had supported peace between Israel and Palestine in the government of Israel had already been assassinated. By the time he was assassinated in 1995, almost every political leader who was supporting peace with Palestine was assassinated. Alright, no one remained. So, and this created the fear psychosis in the society that if this can happen to those who want peace, let us just avoid peace. चाहिए ही नहीं हमें. Alright, कोई दिक्कत नहीं है, चल रहा है जैसा चलने दो, it's fine. Okay, so this is the scenario. हमारे लिए static के हिसाब से ये चीज सबसे important है. Okay, 1994 का Nobel Peace Prize, which was given to Yitzhak Rabin, Yasser Arafat, and Shimon Peres. उसके बाद क्या होता है? Then for 6-7 years nothing is happening. The Palestinians get very very frustrated. They're like our rights are not being recognized, nothing is happening. So 6 years later they rise up in what is known as the second Intifada. The second Intifada turned violent. Okay, this was a violent protest. First Intifada was more or less peaceful. The moment your protest becomes violent, it loses legitimacy. Okay, this is the teachings of Mahatma Gandhi. The moment if you believe your cause is just, it should always remain non-violent. The moment it becomes violent, it loses its legitimacy. That is what the risk that was happening. Okay, so violent protests against Israel's occupation of Palestinian land. 4,000 people died during these protests in 5 years. 4,000 people. Okay, after this, what has happened? Israel has created these huge 10 to 20 feet walls in areas where Palestinians live. Okay, huge walls have been erected, and the movement of Israel Palestinians within their land is now regulated by the government. Okay, serious crackdown on their activities. All of it is very much controlled by the Israeli government now. All right. उसके बाद what happens is the first 2006 के अंदर first election होते हैं for the Palestinian Authority. So Israel also realizes that, see, we need a dummy government, okay, for to show the world. Lot of so they create an authority under the Oslo Accords. There was supposed to be a Palestinian Authority. So they're like, all right, let's create that. A lot of public international pressure had been happening on Israel because of the violent nature of the protest, right? Ki, because you have been so bad to them, that is why the protests have become bad or violent. So the Palestinian Authority had its first elections. This authority was more or less a puppet of Israel. But क्या होता है? People sometimes realize this games that politicians play, right? So the election result was a split result. The election results of 2006 was a split result. Why was it split? Because on the West Bank, okay, the Palestinian Authority won majority. Okay, but on the Gaza Strip, Hamas won the elections, or representatives that are supported by Hamas won the elections. Okay, now what is Hamas? Hamas is a group, it's like the opposite of Zionists. Hamas believes land, Hamas believes that the land only belongs to the Palestinian, and they will fight for removal of Israel. Okay, that's the Israel is nothing. We will fight to restore what was lost in 1970. Okay, that we will go back, we will be able to retain what was lost to us. Obviously, Israel is not going to accept that. How can they let a government be run which is actually against the interest of India itself? The reason why Jawaharlal Nehru had detained Sheikh Abdullah in the prison from 1953 until 1960s, all right, because he believed that Sheikh Abdullah was not being pro-India anymore, and he was advocating more independence, right? He was pushing for independence, which was not something he could grant. Something similar is happening here. Let's see. Hamas wanted the land to become independent, and also they were willing to violently fight against Israel for their removal from the entire territory where Jews had now been living since 1917. Okay, so Hamas broke away from Palestinian Authority because Hamas did not believe in democracy. Palestinian Authority believed in democracy. Okay, and uske baad the organization is declared a terrorist organization across Western world because they use military or arms and ammunition against the Israelis and they want to throw them away. All right. The tragedy is since then no elections have taken place. Every year we keep hearing reports that अब election होंगे Israel Palestine में अब election होंगे Palestinian Authority will now conduct election but they don't want to conduct election for two reasons. One, those in Palestinian Authority have proved to be very corrupt, so they don't want to give up their power. Secondly, Israel wants to continue these corrupt people being heading the government. They know that people will not vote for them. Okay, so they want them to continue. So it's a no one is looking for the interest of the people at heart. All right. Since then, Gaza Strip has become the world's largest prison, you can say. Okay. Gaza is like a living prison. People cannot come in, people cannot go out, people cannot get any trade in. आप कोई ट्रेड नहीं कर सकते, आप कुछ नहीं कर सकते. All right. You are at the mercy of the government. No aid can come in. Whatever has to come in, it has to come in from the at the approval of the Israeli government. Egypt cannot provide any assistance. You cannot have any port opened, even though you have the entire Mediterranean Sea on the western side of Gaza. So it has become a living prison. Alright, so people, it is one of the most poorest place on earth, has the highest rate of poverty, Gaza on its own. Alright, so that has become a huge outlier in terms of Israel. Israel is a vastly developed country, very high human development indicators, and Gaza has become an outlier. Doesn't is at the mercy of the world for surviving every day. Okay, because people cannot move in, people cannot move out. So that condition has been ongoing since 2006. वही चल रहा है अभी 2021 तक. All right, and for foreseeable future, that is what is going to carry on. In the meantime, Donald Trump, okay, Trump as president, so he realized, see, I am not able to resolve Israel Palestine. But what I can do is I can de-hyphenate Israel's relationship with the world. Okay, I will try to normalize relation of Israel with West Asian countries. How will I do that? Through the Abraham Accords. यही क्वेश्चन CLAT 2020 में आया था, right? So, who were the countries who signed the Abraham Accord? UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and Morocco. They are known as Abraham Accords because Abrahamic religion, Christianity, Jew, Jews, Old Testament and New Testament Christians, and Muslims. All of them are known as Abrahamic religion. All right. So therefore, in that recognition, the accords are known as Abraham Accords. U, UAE and Bahrain are seen as this big power. Uh, they're part of this big power table at West Asian or Middle Eastern countries. UAE, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, they are the three big powers of the region. So once you have got one big power on board, it takes very little time to convince the others. All right. So this was United States policy of de-hyphenating relationship of Israel with Western Asian countries only on basis of Palestine. ठीक है? De-hyphenate. Okay, so that was the deal. Now, what does Abraham Accord mean for people? So, first, establishes formal diplomatic relationship, normalized relation with Israel. Very simple point. Ki it's like the doorway. It opens the doorway for normalization of relationship of countries with Israel. It is also like an acceptance of treatment that Israel is meting out on Palestinians. Why had these Middle Eastern countries not recognized Israel since 1947? Because of what was happening to Palestinians. They believed that Israel was doing something that was wrong. So they had taken a principled stand that, see, you are doing something wrong, so we cannot let you do that. It's not something we want to support. Fair enough, very good point. You're taking a principled stand. Very, very good. But what it also does on the other side is shows the non-commitment of these Muslim countries on Palestine. They're like, now that you have normalized relationship, you have reduced your commitment to Muslim countries in general, or Muslim countries' commitment on Palestine. Because what else can you bargain with them? Okay, and that despite the rights of Palestine not actually secured, they are now okay with Israel. Because now 2 years have passed and nothing has changed for the Palestinians. Okay, what it has also done, it has paved way for India to dehyphenate relationship with West countries in Middle East away from the issue of Palestine. We can also freely engage with Israel and Western Middle Eastern countries without the issue being linked with Palestine. If they have dropped the issue of Palestine, we can also drop the issue of Palestine. Because let's say we want any military equipment from Israel, and we are on the other side also criticizing them कि आपको Palestinians के साथ ये नहीं करना चाहिए, वो नहीं करना चाहिए. But now if everyone else who has a direct stakeholdership in the issue of Palestine, they have dropped them. Who are we to talk about it? हम तो वहां जाके जंग लड़ेंगे नहीं. We will not go and fight a war there for them, right? So if they have dropped their idea, we can also conveniently drop it. So this is what political geopolitics is all about. It's not a principled game. It's a winner takes all approach. So the moment someone has dropped, you get a leverage that, see, this was primarily your fight. I was always with you. The fact that you have given up on the fight, I have no incentive left to fight it anyway. Okay. So it turns Palestine into a more or less non-consequential event now. Okay. But people have a strong will, whatever the governments are doing, right? They will not always be peacefully accepting everything that the government is doing. So here on your screens, you can see the images of the Al Aqsa Mosque compound. The monument on your screen is the Dome of Rock. Okay, this is the Al Aqsa Mosque compound. What had happened here? In this compound, Israeli police stormed the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound in East Jerusalem and reportedly left 300 injured. What had happened? In the Sheikh Jarrah and Silwan region, ठीक है, Palestinians were asked कि भाई move away to make way for Jewish settlers. They were dragged out of their houses and that frustration boiled over. Okay, in that regard, so people clashed with the police. They did not want. There was another fear that the Israeli police might actually take over the mosque compound also. And they will take over this entire area and push out the Palestinians from this area. This led to what we saw as the rocket missiles attack. Alright. So these were the missiles that Hamas launched into Israel, which were being countered by the Iron Dome system. We'll be talking about the Iron Dome system now. And this were the buildings of hideouts of Hamas which were targeted. So Hamas, which believes that it is the legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, it decided that to challenge Israel, they will launch rockets, very weak rockets known as Al Qasim. These rockets are even made in your kitchen. All right, so very, very weak, small rockets, not as sophisticated as our rockets, such as the Agni missile or BrahMos missile or Prithvi missile. None of those. Very, very basic rocket mechanism, something that you create in your kitchen compounds. All right, so that is how Hamas had created amassed these huge number of rockets. Okay, so they fired them, multiple of them at one point of time in Israel. Israeli territory. They had done it in 2014 also. So in 2014, these rockets caused a lot of damage. So Israel this time in those years developed a system to counter these rockets, an interception system. That you launch a rocket, we will launch a missile to counter your rocket. Very similar to what the S-400 does. S-400 is but for nuclear missiles or hypersonic missiles. Okay, so, what was the cause of these clashes? The Al Aqsa Mosque is located in the area that is at the Temple Mount. Okay, in Islam, this area is known as Haram e Sharif. This is the third holiest place of Islam. The Mount is also Judaism's holiest place, or the religion of the Jews. So, the Temple Mount area, which houses the Al Aqsa Mosque, is also considered holy by the Jews. Uh, The most imposing structure of the compound is Dome of Rock with its golden dome. Alright. The western wall of that compound is known as the Wailing Wall, which is sacred to the Jews. They believe that back in first century a temple had existed here, and they go to that wall and mourn there. Okay. Mourn for their sins or anything. Okay. So that is part of the compound. Now, soon after the Six-Day War had ended in 1967, Israel captured the entire territory, but the administration of the Al Aqsa Mosque was given to Jordan. Okay, they're like, we don't want to keep it, it's a Muslim compound. You can keep it and you run the management. Okay, and since then, Jordan has not allowed non Muslims to worship at Al Aqsa. They also don't allow anyone else. But unlike जामा मस्जिद, जैसे आप जामा मस्जिद जा सकते हो, वहां पे आप देख सकते हो, घूम सकते हो, बट आप वहां पे प्रे नहीं कर सकते. Alright, so that was the key. So non-Muslims had not been allowed at Al-Aqsa, and Jewish individuals and groups have made repeated attempts to take entry into the Mount Temple Plaza. Okay, so this is the crux of the clashes. Then, since 1990s, around the first Intifada, such attempts began occurring more regularly. Jewish settlers began settling or claiming land in East Jerusalem and its surrounding areas. This has been the cause of clashes and tensions around Al-Aqsa. Okay, this is the Temple Mount structure, Haram-e-Sharif. This is the Al-Aqsa Mosque. This is the Dome of Rock. Okay, this is the Jewish part of the city. Okay, this is the Muslim quarter, this is the Christian quarter, this is the total area, total Temple Mount area. Okay, this is what they want to claim. So they believed that Israeli government is going to take over this area and slowly remove Muslims from this area all over. Something that had happened to other places. Okay, so this risk intensified into the clashes that happened in 2021. Okay, so last thing that we have to discuss is the Iron Dome system. So Iron Dome system is very similar. Enemy rockets are launched, fired. Okay, there is a radar system that detects and tracks these rockets. What will be their trajectory? How high they will go? There is a control system that estimates how much of it is needed, and then lastly, a launcher fires a missile to intercept. a very expensive system, but it Israel has created multiple of these systems at different parts of the country and the border areas in border cities. Okay, and they have a carrying capacity. If even if 100 rockets are fired at the same time, the system will still not fail. It will be able to detect all these 100 rockets and shoot all of them in the air. So that is the Iron Dome system. India has bought a far more sophisticated one because the rockets fired by Hamas are not of the same strength as the one that India believe it will deal with. Okay, so Iron Dome system is a cheap version of missile interception. All right, so this is the Iron Dome system. Now, what are the rival claims over Jerusalem? So we had talked about how Jerusalem in 1947 was supposed to be a corpus separatum, an independent territory, and both Israel and Palestine claim it to be their capital. Okay, in 1980, Israeli parliament passed a law declaring Jerusalem as country's capital. The Palestinians have also declared it as their capital by a law passed by the Palestinian Authority in 2020. All right. In 1988, during the first Intifada, which was a declaration of their independence, they claimed Jerusalem as their capital. Now, at present, Palestinian Authority's headquarters is at Ramlala, and Israel administrative capital Tel Aviv. Their government works from Tel Aviv. Similarly, Palestinian Authority headquarters is in Ramlala. Both of them claim that Jerusalem is their center area, all right, or their capital. Now, lastly, what is India's stand about all of this? So, India had recognized Israel way back in 1950 itself. We had signed to Resolution 181. We had agreed to it. We were the first non-Arab country to recognize Palestine Liberation Organization as the sole representative of the Palestinians. We were the first and one of the first countries to recognize statehood of Palestine in 1988. During the first Intifada, they declared independence. We accepted that they are independent and declared are recognition for them. Western countries like USA, United Kingdom, France, Germany, they don't recognize Palestine as a state. Okay, but since 2014, we have been taking a different stand. All right, so this year also UNHRC resolution. So in 2014, we abstained from voting against Israel in UNHRC. This policy is something we have continued. Okay, recently in 2021 also, we abstained. Okay, we did not vote against them. As part of our Link West policy, India has de-hyphenated its relationship with Israel and Palestine. Okay, we are like, we recognize Palestine, but we want them to resolve it. We can't do anything about it. Okay, we have to wait for them to come to a solution. All right, and recently, in June 2019, we had voted in favor of a decision introduced by Israel in UN ECOSOC that objected to granting consultative status to Palestinian government organization. Okay? In ECOSOC, we supported Israel in objecting to Palestinian recognition. Okay, so more and more we have been moving pro-Israel because we need Israel's import. We have become their largest importer for defense equipment. All of that has contributed to our closeness to Israel in recent times. So this is the largest story about the dispute of Israel Palestine. Okay, with this, I will conclude. From current affairs perspective, we need to know this entire background to understand the clashes at Al-Aqsa. That is the basic dispute related for us in the current context. The other part that is also important for us is the elections in Israel. This year, there were the fourth election in 2 years in Israel. All right. So those things we'll talk about next time as part three, which is part of Israel series. All right. So on that note, I take leave from you. Thank you so much. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you are new to the channel, do subscribe to it and hit the bell icon so that you don't miss the update. At 9 p.m. today at the legal game, I am hosting a video about the Pegasus judgment, for which I had done an introductory video yesterday. So on that note, hoping to see all of you at 9 p.m. Thank you so much. Take care, all of you, in the meantime.